Every day we get new reports on COVID-19 and how it affects different sectors in the community. But what about the tissue industry? Can we see any consequences so far, and what can we expect in the coming years? Is it even possible to predict something? We have an expert with us to help us with these questions. Welcome, Mr. Esko Uutela. You are well known in the industry as a representative from RISI Fastmarket, and I know you're following the tissue industry closely. So what have you observed so far since the COVID-19 outbreak?
Well, I have to say that the global tissue industry has been hit and will continue to be hit by very contradictory developments because of the COVID-19 issue. And the consequences will be quite disparate between the consumer tissue and away-from-home tissue markets. That's actually my main message of this interview. Tissue is one of the daily necessities needed in a modern society, and during the coronavirus time, this has become very clear. Throughout the world, people started panic buying of toilet paper, which was one of the main targets, together with disinfection fluids and also durables or foodstuffs. Through this hoarding of tissue goods, many sales outlets had empty tissue aisles for weeks, and companies reported sales doubling and all stock sold out. And also violence erupted with customers fighting for the last bag of toilet paper. And sales were booming actually. For example, in Germany, the index of toilet paper sales was more than 3 times above the normal level in mid-March. But when shelves and mill storages were emptied and mills were not able to correspond to the demand, sales fell down in April before starting to normalize again.
What does this mean for the tissue producers?
Well, tissue mills turned to be a strategic asset. Tissue trucks of their loads were even hijacked. At least in Hong Kong and Germany this happened. On the other hand, tissue mills have reported full capacity utilization for months and weeks, and extra shifts were organized for converting in Europe and North America, and the demand for additional parent roll purchases picked sharply up. In China, mills in Hubei were down for weeks, and companies needed to make all efforts to keep their supply chain working. But overcapacity in China helped so that no major shortages emerged, whereas reserve capacities were limited in Europe and North America. That's why we had the empty tissue aisles. US tissue mills have recorded all-time high capacity utilization rates, 99.8% in March and 99.5% in April. So the main figure is still missing.
So what are the biggest challenges for the tissue mills?
Well, maybe the main issue was at the beginning, at least, the logistic issues, because they were a problem. They made problems. For a couple of months, the harbors were working with limited capabilities, and containers were not returning quickly enough. For tissue trade, this has been a difficult issue, and for example, Chinese tissue exports to the United States collapsed in March and April. On the other hand, for new projects, travel restraints have been a problem, and so I think that most new tissue projects, startups have seen an extra delay for 2 or 3 months, as startup teams have not been able to travel as planned. And services have increasingly been moved to online or phone consultation rather than visiting the mills.
What future impact do you see on the aspects of demand and supply?
Well, in the short term, so the impact for consumer tissue is definitely positive. For the away-from-home business, 2020 will be a bad year due to many issues, including less traveling and hotel lodging, more home office working, and likely so 10 to 20% of eating places will not reopen because of liquidity issues, or some entrepreneurs have given up their businesses. This is especially in the US the case. In the longer term, there may be also some positive factors helping tissue consumption. It is likely that people continue to increasingly think hygienic issues, such as hand washing, which needs also hand drying. And reportedly, some air-blowing hand dryers have been turned off in the United States, Europe, and Japan, for the fear that they are virus links. This has happened in the fast service restaurant chains and also in some airports and some other issues, but it's a slow process because you need to have the towel dispensers there, and this takes place all the time, but it's not really a one night. You cannot change everything overnight. In the consumer tissue, households are likely to keep higher stocks than before. Some reports say that people are having tissue in their home storage now for 2 weeks instead of 1 week. So that's like that kind of typical issue. I don't know whether it's true, but I mean, it's likely that people will have more. But that's a one-time effect only. But just to think about all in all, so the COVID-19 pandemic may not be a negative issue for the tissue business. First of all, now tissue mills have been benefiting from high demand and reasonable pulp prices, and only the dedicated away from homes have been hit by sales problems. But even they have been able to sell parent rolls or stock keeping units, which can be distributed through channels ending to consumers rather than away from home users. I have to say that the use of tissue is of habitual nature and cannot be very much affected by economic recession or pandemics like this current one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Esko.